day while talking with my client, he mentioned that he recently acquired a new list that he wants to use for upcoming promotions. He commented how tedious that it would be to manually create each of these contact records in ACT one by one. When I mentioned the import functionality in ACT, he said that he thought about that already, but he was scared that some of the contacts on this list might already be in his database. So he's resorting to looking them up one by one and then creating the contacts for those that don't already exist. So what I want to do is help my client simplify this time-consuming task. To start, I'm going to enable duplicate checking in his database so that we can avoid creating any duplicate contact records. To do this, I'm going to go to my Tools menu, and I will go down to the Preferences area and launch the Preferences window. From here, I'm going to click the Admin tab, and then at the bottom we'll see the duplicate checking area. I'm going to click the duplicate checking button, and I want to make sure that this box is checked, Enable Duplicate Checking in the database. Now I just have to decide what are the criteria that defines a duplicate record. Well, first I want to make sure I match on the contact's name. If two contacts have the same name, then that's a hint that we have a duplicate, but that's not enough. I also want to match on their email address. So if their names match and their email addresses match, I'm pretty sure that's a duplicate record, and then ACT can help me take care of that. So I'm going to click OK, and now I'll click Apply and OK again to close the Preferences window. Now I know that duplicate checking is enabled, and I want to take a look at this list that the client has given to me. It's in an Excel file, which is pretty straightforward. But let's just make sure that the data is somewhat clean and reliably formatted in the spreadsheet. So let's see what we have here. We've got a header row at the top, which is good. This helps me identify the values in each column. And it looks like all of these columns contain the usual sort of information, like company name, contact name, email, address, and so on. Now, even though these phone numbers aren't consistently formatted, that's really not a concern to me right now. Sometimes lists like these will also contain dozens of additional columns that I find unnecessary. So we can always delete columns before doing the import. We can always change the formatting before we do the import. But I want to make note of two things before I go back into ACT. First, I'm going to make a mental note of this first contact, Barbara Ralston. I want to make sure that after I do the import, Barbara Ralston shows up in the database. Second, I have purposefully added a duplicate contact here, Kevin Arthesen. Kevin already exists in the CloudWalker database, so I want to make sure that my automatic duplicate checking does not create this contact again in ACT. So with those two things in mind, I'm going to close Excel, and I'm going to go back to ACT. And from ACT, I'll go to my File menu, and I'll choose Import. This launches the Import Wizard, so let's click Next. And now the type of file I want to import is going to be an Excel file. Now I just need to browse to this file. I have it on my desktop in a class files folder, and it's called ACT Contact Import. So I'll open that. There's no need for a username or password, so I'll click Next. And now I just need to verify this is going to be contact records that we're importing. And from looking at the spreadsheet, I didn't see any unusual fields or anything, so I'm going to do a typical import. Since I've already configured my duplicate checking ahead of time, I can just skip that step and click Next. And now ACT tells me that all fields are compatible and this import may continue. So let's click the Import button. ACT is now copying the file into a temporary location and performing the import. And if it's a large file, it'll take a little bit longer, but mine is finished. So I'm going to click the Finish button to close the wizard. Now let's do a quick lookup on that first contact to make sure that it came across okay. Her name was Barbara, so I'll just type Barb in the search window here. And there she is, Barbara Ralston. Now I should also notice there should not be two contacts named Kevin Arthesen, so I'm going to type Kevin and do a search. And we can see that it did not import a second instance of Kevin Arthesen. So performing a typical import is pretty straightforward, and all of the new contacts are now available to my client.